You, my friends, have been swept into something very strange, but not the kind involving reptilians or wind turbines powered through the ground bones of innocence, but something far more subtle and, oddly enough, quite ancient. Welcome to the age of agalmatophilic reversal, and honestly, it explains everything. Agalmatophilic reversal, or more specifically, agalmatophilic auto-objectification, is a term so unnecessarily convoluted yet weirdly accurate, you will immediately want to tell someone at your next state-mandated social gathering just to see the sheer confusion and bewilderment in their eyes. But stay with me here. This isn't just jargon, it's a deeply fascinating psychological, dare we say, psychosexual phenomenon that does explain a great deal about our modern obsessions. And if you bear with me, you might actually agree. So, what on earth is agalmatophilia? Well, for the blissfully unaware, which is if you're a normal human being, everyone, it refers to the attraction to statues. What? Mannequins or immobile, typically human-like but not quite human figures. Historically, this fascination might manifest with fixations on sculptures like Michelangelo's David, or even an attraction to lifeless forms in shop windows. It's odd, perhaps, but ultimately, I think it is kind of understandable. You see a mannequin sometimes and you're like, damn, they're kind of bad. And certainly, psychologically, this obsession is actually kind of understandable if we look at it in the context of beauty, perfection, and loneliness. The first time the term was used was in the 1950s, when psychiatrist and sexologist, arguably the best job ever of all time, John Money, coined agalmatophilia to describe this rare paraphilia involving attraction to statues, essentially objects of perfect, immobilized beauty. But the narrative I'm sharing with you today isn't about your hidden fascination with marble or plaster, unless of course it is, in which case sound off in the comments. It's instead something far more psychologically intriguing that this term has really laid the groundwork for, and done so in an interesting way. So bear with me here. How did we end up with this strange term? Well, come the age of internet, things take a really strange twist. Traditionally, statues, they represented an idealized form of beauty and perfection, objects to be admired. But in recent years, through a bizarre complex form of socio-psychological gymnastics, we've inverted this dynamic. We no longer simply fetishize the object, we've internalized this desire to become the object itself. But it's not just typical objectification. This is done almost fetishistically. This inversion can be described as a reversal of the traditional case of agalmatophilia. Technically, we could understand this as agalmatophilic auto-objectification. And again, you're going to have to bear with me. It's objectification because you objectify, and it's auto because it's done to yourself. So that term actually does begin, as convoluted as it is, to make quite a lot of sense. It describes this desire to be that immobile, unflinching, perfect statue, where we don't simply want beauty in others, we want ourselves to embody that perfection. Unreachable, untouchable, perfect, and lifeless. Think about your Instagram feed, where it's carefully curated and filtered. Think about influencers who look polished to an almost unreal extent. For many, the desire to become that marble statue far supersedes any desire to even be human. And yet that very desire, as we will see, is really understandable. In that state, there is no rejection. There's pure objectification, and a pure object fears nothing. It is unassailable. And this is a psychosexual power play. Now, before anyone panics, let me clarify. When we talk about psychosexual drives, we refer to deep psychological drives involving power, control, transformation, and emotional distance, concepts thoroughly explored by psychoanalytic thinkers like Freud. In this context, the agalmatophilic auto-objectification refers to creating a version of ourselves devoid of vulnerability and emotion. We become an object, admired from afar. Fundamentally, unfortunately, removed from genuine connection. This is about a desire far deeper than what some guru tells you online, but it's about a symbolic desire for emotional safety and control, and it actually transcends gender, race, and sexuality. But how did we end up here? How did we reach this most peculiar state? Well, historically, human societies have always been drawn to perfection through religious icons, classical sculptures, cultural narratives, heroes, saints. Yet our current digital era has intensified this drive towards self-perfection. The omnipresence of visual culture combined with unprecedented access to tools for self-modification and representation has created an environment uniquely conducive to this state of agalmatophilic reversal. The most significant catalyst, obviously, as complex as it is social media. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and even LinkedIn encourage and arguably demand this meticulously crafted self-image. And this neuroses is only further proliferated by those who know how to master the art of self-objectification, with so few trying to move beyond it. Each profile becomes a personal exhibit in a global digital museum, where we carefully sculpt our online personas, removing imperfections, enhancing supposed attractiveness, presenting an idealized version of life that's static, flawless, and ultimately statuesque. The likes, the followers, and the validation reinforce this cycle, creating an addictive feedback loop that runs far deeper than just the admittedly enticing dopaminergic loops. It creates a self-fulfilling desire to become ever more perfect and object-like. And when the rejection and the disdain follow, the seed has already been sown. This fetishistic ideology has already taken hold, and it forces but one answer: the rejection, the disdain. All the normal human experiences are not normal. They happen because you are not perfect. And this is what happens when a neuroses takes hold. The way to transcend, it says, is to become something so beautiful that you are unassailable and no one can reach you. But this is dark. Perfectionism, in any form, inevitably comes at an exceptionally high psychological cost. The pursuit of turning yourself into that so wonderful statue makes one emotionally inert, abstracted, disconnected. Relationships suffer under the weight of emotional withdrawal. Spontaneity and authenticity become casualties of constant performance. Anxiety and depression, even derealization, take hold as we realize consciously or unconsciously that living as a polished statue is ultimately unnatural. Yet, if that auto-objectification has taken hold, it seeks only to remedy the pain through further indulgence of the neuroses, and it's doomed to fail. Not because the beautiful form cannot be achieved, of course it can, but because the human psyche simply was not built to exist as an untouchable, emotionless, flawless marble figure. And so the cracks inevitably begin to form. Our fixation on becoming perfect shows that there's an underlying fear of genuine human existence, where it's messy, unpredictable, and mortal. The statues last far beyond our time, and by abstracting ourselves into polished forms, we're attempting to transcend humanity's inherent imperfections and anxieties, and thus transcend being human altogether. Ironically, in doing this, we sacrifice all the qualities that make life meaningful and rewarding in the first place. This desire to become an object isn't purely the result of social media, but social media provides a mechanism for this unconscious and even sometimes conscious drive that is so rarely spoken about. And unfortunately, social media channels it in a deeply dark and dehumanizing, fetishistic way. But only by recognizing this can we begin to move beyond it. So, how do we escape from this marble prison? How do we rehumanize ourselves? Well, fortunately, this cycle isn't unbreakable. In fact, I think the fix is quite clear. And if you've stayed with me this long, you can probably see what's coming. The problem is, the fix is one that attacks the very core of the neuroses. And so does so with the exact kind of advice someone enthralled by this neuroses is going to quite easily reject. And it's by abandoning the marble. It's by reclaiming your humanity. It involves embracing imperfection and vulnerability once again. You first recognize this agalmatophilic reversal. You acknowledge the unconscious drive towards becoming this perfect, admired object and how absurd and inhuman that really is. Then intentionally break the cycle, and you do so with authentic existence. You can still use social media. You can even do this. You can post content online. Allow imperfections to show. You can engage meaningfully with others. And that can, of course, be done in any real form. Learn to see value, not in the aesthetic idealization of yourself, but in the authentic, chaotic beauty of genuine human experience. And authenticity isn't just therapeutic, it's completely transformative. You can, of course, still be beautiful, and you can still sculpt your form to suit your desire if you so choose. In fact, if you want to, more power to you. But you don't have to wrench yourself from humanity and become that immobile beast. Ultimately, remember, you're not meant to be a statue. Leave marble perfection to museum exhibitions and embrace the beautiful chaos of authentic human life. Make mistakes, allow vulnerability, and reconnect emotionally. Those quiet moments of unspoken tenderness where the authentic self comes through and the perfect visage cracks, and yet those people who bear witness to it stay anyway. That will dwarf all those attempts to become that perfect statue. So thank you for joining me on this exploration, and if you're interested to see what strange tales my channel has to bring, stay tuned. And as you return to your social media feeds, consider this. Are you becoming the exhibit, or are you actually living your life as the curator of genuine experiences? So if you've enjoyed this dive into our collective psychological quirks, please decimate that like button and reprimand that subscribe. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Are you recovering from being a statue, or are you only realizing now that you've in fact been one for far too long? So until next time, embrace life beyond the marble and peace out.